Welcome all. This is Raymond for Stream Gamers. Today we're going to do a flight, and we're going to use the A310. So it'll be a Delta flight A310. We are going to depart Victoria uh, Victoria International Airport, CYYJ, and we're going to Boise, KBOI. So that's the flight. We're going to be using um, SimBrief to put the flight plan together. I, Anybody who's seen some of my videos for flying around and setting up and stuff like that, you all know that typically I use Navigraph. I've elected to discontinue my subscription to Navigraph, and I've elected to do that for a couple of reasons. The primary reason is I know that 2024 is coming out, and I think they have a system in there that I can utilize to mostly to the same effect. It will be different, but it's a part of the sim, and I don't have to worry about or pay a monthly subscription. The other thing is they have access to this thing called ChartFox. Those that have an account through VetSim. It's a free service. You can just create an account. You can use ChartFox, and you can create your flight in here. You can also view, as you see right now, this is the chart for our departing airport. Um, so you can see there's charts. You can add them in here. There's the charts that we're going to use for our arrival. This is the chart that we're going to use for our sorry, this is the arrival chart. This is the chart that we're going to use for the apron and the airport and all that. So I'm going to do this and do it without little Navigraph. Anyways, here's our aircraft. We are cold and dark. Now, the A310, I'm going to go through this as I set it up and get it ready for departure and that kind of stuff. It may not be 100% accurate and correct. Down there in the comment section, you could place the mistakes that I make and make comments and so forth about them. And hopefully I'll learn and get better. This A310 is an init build A310, and it's a free aircraft, I believe, in 2020. I'm not sure if because I have another package, it gives me this aircraft. I don't think so. Anyways, we got our flight bag turned on. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here. We're going to turn on the power. I'm going to turn this down just a bit. Okay. The second thing we're going to do is up here, we need to turn on the IRS, the initial reference system. There's three of them. There's another one on the other side. And for those that are saying, hey, you can make a view that goes up there. Yeah, I know. I just apparently too lazy to do it. And put that one on. Okay. So that takes care of that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our we're going to turn on. Sorry, I'm a little helter skelter here. We're going to turn on our external power. We're going to turn on our pumps here because we're going to put the APU on. We're going to put on our probe heat, window heat. That's all going to come online. We're going to put on our strobe just to let everybody know. Whoops. And fasten the seat belts are going to come on. You're not allowed to smoke in this flight. Emergency exit, we're going to arm that. So we assume all of our passengers are on. The next thing we're going to do is down here, it's telling us to align the IRS. And the way we do that is we first of all have to go to under menu, we have to go to ACAR. We have to basically, we're importing our flight plan through SimBrief into the sim. And we are Delta 1966. Put that in. We're going to put our, so once you create the flight plan in here in SimBrief, I've done this a few times, so I won't spend too much time with it, but ultimately departure, arrival, pick your aircraft, put your ICAO code for the airline you're flying in and the flight number, and you're pretty much set. We hit generate. I'm probably going to have to do this again, but maybe not. We'll see. So I'm going to collect all of the data that I'm going to talk to you about inputting into the flight bag, FMC, and so forth around the aircraft. That data is coming from here. The fuel block data is not the burn. Um, it is the fuel block. So those that are doing this setup in the A310, just be aware that's where we're getting that information. So this is the fuel that will be used to do the flight. But in order for us to deal with the alternate that we may have to fly, we may have to fly a missed approach, maybe do a holding pattern, so forth and so on. That's why we have the extra fuel. All right, next. So our cost index is 14. We're going to align the IRS like so. That brings all of our displays up properly. Now we're going to go over here. We're going to collect our weather information, which is there. This is our checklist, which we won't use a lot. We're going to go here. We want to know what the runway length is. It's 6960. So 6966 actually is the truth of it all. The runway heading is 270. Rest of that we're going to leave. That's brought in from SimBrief. Temperature and all that's going to be there. The weight is the maximum or the total takeoff weight. Again, that comes from SimBrief. Estimated takeoff weight is 238. So right there, 238. What? It's not just 8, it's 8 and change. 238.58. 58. There we go. And then we hit calculate. Weight exceeds maximum. Oh, I did that wrong. Yes, of course I did that wrong. 230.8. There we go. And calculate. So there's our flex. There's our V1, V2, V1, VR, V2 speeds. Okay, so we got that information. Next thing is we're going to go down here and we're going to fill in this stuff. Our paying passengers is 150 of them. Enter. Our cargo is 8,036. Whoops. And our fuel is 20,877. 877. Enter. We'll apply that in here, get that put into there. Now we're going to go down to the FMC and we're going to start programming some of the FMC for all of its stuff that it needs. Hit the next page. Whoops. Hit the next page. It takes us into our fuel block page. So 20,000 or 20.8. 20.8. The zero fuel weight is 210.8. 210.8. Calculates our takeoff. Our CG, which is what we've calculated here, is 23. Okay, so we got that set. Our V speeds are 126, 129. I typically like to, we'll go up here because we got our alignment all done. We'll put on yaw damper, pitch, and those ones on. That gives us this axis here. have to check one thing here quickly. Make sure that's turned on. It is, but I need to reinitialize that. I've said 1,000 times in these streams, it seems like it probably isn't, but I have an autopilot panel and a radio stack and a switch panel here on the desk as well, and so I use that. Okay, so for my speed, I typically turn that up somewhere in around the 200-ish mark. Okay, let's find out what our climb altitude and all that is. We're climbed to 39,000. Okay. Get that set. 30. We're getting it. Two more. Clicky, clickies. There we go. Our heading was 270. And I always like to set my vertical climb speed somewhere around 18, 1900. That's out of the box in the event for some reason or other autopilot doesn't engage. I'll set that to -5. I believe that's more for the landing than it is for the takeoff. But okay, so we've got that set. Let's go into the flight plan here. Let's click on that. Let's click on the SID. We're leaving on runway 27. We have no SID that we're using. We'll insert that. Okay. And then we're going to go down here and we're going to click on Boise and star 10 left, ILS 10 left. It's 10 right, 10 right. So not an ILS. VOR. Okay. Okay, so we'll use an RNAV. We'll use this RNAV Yankee 10 left right there. There is no star, so we insert that. We're going to quickly browse through here, make sure there's no discontinuities and all of those wonderful things. Doesn't look like there is. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that part is set. We'll dial this out a little bit just to give ourselves a little bit of distance. We're going to use slats 15 and flaps 15, which is you can see right there. That's a standard takeoff for the Airbus 310. We got that. We got that. We got that. Now in here, there is a pushback utility. Okay, I don't use it a lot, but for this demonstration purposes, I'm going to. So the importance of doing what I'm doing now, um, and having these charts and everything else, we can see this is where I am on the apron, and I'm going to depart here. So I'm probably going to push back and kind of taxi, you know, like this, something like that, probably, you know. Yeah. So I'm going to push back and I'm going to turn out right. Yeah. Okay. So let's, before we do this, let's just make sure that our lights are all on. Taxi. Let's put our fuel pumps on because we're going to be firing up the fuel. We didn't start the APU, so that's a good thing. We're still hanging on here a little bit. We're gonna wait. We're gonna need to wait for this to come live, and then we're gonna need to turn on APU bleed. So once it says available here, it is just that, available. Oh, I didn't set. I'm a little helter-skelter from my normal process, but that's okay. Flex speed, 59 degrees. So flex here. It kind of derates the engines. Whoops! It derates the engines based on temperature. I guess it's to save fuel and to deal with noise abatements and stuff like that, to reduce the amount of noise that we might be dealing with. Okay. So that's what that's for. We're going to have what we're going to do is we're going to pre-engage our profile, our nav. So nav obviously is navigating right, left, and that kind of stuff. Profile is up and down, and speed and whatnot, all that good stuff, or up and down. And then later on, once we get it airborne, we're going to turn on the auto throttle once we get the aircraft in a stable climb toward our first waypoint. Our first waypoint is Disco. So that's where we're going to be going to our first waypoint. Disco is right. So those that use little nav map, because I've got this flight plan now programmed in SimBrief, I can go down here and put my SimBrief ID in, hit download, create the plan. I don't want to save that. So there it is. That's the entirety of the flight plan. And Disco is probably right there. So that's our first waypoint. That's where we're headed to first. Let's go see if our APU is ready. Our APU is ready. Let's put on our bleed. We're able to now disconnect our GPU. So there it goes. It's gone. Galley light is on, and we've been disconnected. So now we're going to go back here, and we're going to do our pushback, which is here. So prepare for pushback. Now, bear with me because I don't know I've used this. Prepare for pushback and departure. So why do they got that button? What happens when we push that button? Well, let's go see. Let's take our brakes off. Oh yeah, there's the tug. So brakes are here. I have a switch for that, but that's the brake. And he will be pushing us back. So as soon as he starts pushing us, we'll get ready to start the right engine. Come on now. Let's go. Here we go. So right engine start. How we start the engines is we come down here. We'll set this to A. We'll hit starter. That's going to switch. We're going to see the engine spin. Whoop. Starting to spin up there. See? We're going to see temps are coming up. Summer's at 19. We'll throw the fuel on. Going to look to see where we're at. I want to start turning right. Go straight back a little bit more. There is a utility that lets us do this more automated, which I like to use and I typically use, but um, I recently reloaded my computer and I don't have that utility put in. If I think about the name of it, I'll try to remember and tell you what it's called. Oops. I want it to turn right again. So we'll get this engine started now. We're just about there for stopping our pushback. Stop. Brake on. Fuel on. Okay. We'll dismiss the tug. Here goes. There he's gone. Okay. So at this point, we should be ready. We got our taxi light is on for taxi. Um, these lights, I'm not 100% sure when I'm supposed to turn them on, but that's okay. I can hear the engines coming alive. You might be hearing them already. Hopefully you are. So the engines are alive. We're going to switch this over to continuous, like so. We are now on battery power, or I mean on engine generated power. So I'm going to switch the APU off. I'm going to switch the bleed off because we're going to use the compressed air from the engines for the in-cab um, heating and cooling and so forth. Okay, so I guess we begin our taxi. We have a bit of a taxi to get ourselves to where we're going. I'm typically I'm going to follow the speed restrictions and that kind of stuff, but I may go a little, I may infringe on them a little bit just to get ourselves closer to the uh, departing runway quicker, because there is a bit of a long taxi for us here. Let's make sure we got no incoming, no immediate anyways. Oh, look at that, I'm getting zero frame rates. I don't know if you guys can see that up there, but I'm getting zero frame rates. That's fantastic. I'm not, of course, but that frame counter thing that NVIDIA has built into their experience something or other is not always as reliable as one would think it should be. At least it isn't for me. So we'll taxi past all these buildings, and up at the end there's another taxiway that we'll jump onto, and that will take us to the runway 27. We're heading for this is taxi S or Sierra, and we'll turn on Echo, and Echo will take us to uh, the threshold. We'll get a little more speed out of this thing, so we're not dawdling too much. Here's Echo here that we're racing toward. That runway that's directly in front of us, that's the runway we'll be taking off on. So I'm not sure why they tell me to take off on runway 27. Well, what they did is it looks like we got about a 7 knot wind suggesting I should be taking off on the reciprocal of 27, but flight plan says 27, so we will take off on 27. Now, 7 knots in a A310 is really nothing to think about. Because I'm not on ATC here, we're going to just kind of look out the aircraft, make sure I'm not impeding on anybody. That's the last thing I want to do is I don't want to disturb somebody else's approach. So I don't want my approach to be disturbed. So we'll gain the runway. So we will line up for the runway. We'll pause for a second or two. We'll bring up the engines to the, some 30, 40, 50% thereabouts, stabilize them, and then we will go full out and let her rip. Let her rip. Oop, I should be paying attention to taxiing. There we go. Rotate. Speed is now governed by the auto throttle. We're live on our um, autopilot. Gear is up. We should be turning. Okay. We will endeavor to turn that off, and we'll get ourselves on the heading. Flaps and slats are up. So right now our speed is being controlled by the auto throttle, um, and our heading and so forth is not. You can see down here in the display I'm headed toward this line here. I get myself kind of headed in that right direction, and I'll put the autopilot back on. Typically, that's what I do. I don't usually put the autopilot on as soon as I did. I was doing a bit of a test to see would it actually, do all of that for me. It doesn't appear that it will, so I will do it manually myself. This should get me in the direction that we're going, and this should allow the aircraft to kind of take over and fly toward the intended path, which it looks like it is. The climb rate is pretty excessive. And there we are. So we have lit the thing up. We're on our way. So we have about a 400-mile flight. Um, should be about an hour flight. And then we will endeavor to put it on the deck, um, and reverse the sequence of events. Um, let's briefly discuss our in-flight. So we are climbing to 39,000 feet, and if I look at the whatchamacallit display here, we're intended to have our top of climb there. Of course, that's dependent on a lot of things. It's dependent on the wind, how much headwind, tailwind we actually have. Um, so those are some of the key factors that it's dependent on. We are climbing through 10,000, so whoops, let's not turn that dial. Um, and I do this every time. I need it to turn taxi off. Um, so we're set. Mm, There we go. So um, we'll let ourselves climb up. We'll get around the 18,000 feet. We'll put our barometric pressure to standard. We do that right here. We'll do that on both sides. They're not linked together, so you have to do that on both sides. Um, I should have really hit the B key to get the barometric pressure that is on the runway, but I didn't. um, just looking to see where we're at. We're close to Disco. We're 5 miles out of Disco right now. I think so. There is going to be little that we'll have to go through. Now, I am streaming this live, and that I can see there's nobody watching the stream, and that's okay. I understand that I'll have to do this, and hopefully people will start watching streams eventually. And so, because there isn't a lot of people, because there isn't people in the stream right now, I my intentions were to kind of go over some discussions and topics and conversation, answering questions, getting advice from people, and going through this whole process. That was my intention, but there is nobody there. And I was planning on doing that throughout the flight till we get close to top of descent, where we'll start talking about, what is the plan for from top of descent and, descending down, lining up, all of that good stuff and how all of that works. Now, we are on an RNAV approach, and so we will not be using the ILS. The RNAV approach is going to get us lined up. Um, but the altitude, the way I understand, I'm going to control that myself, and I'm fine. I'm happy to do that. It's no big deal. We're coming through 19,000 feet, so we're going to pull this. Sorry, and we see standard, and we see standard. So now we're on the standard barometric pressure. Um, I would happily explain that, but I very loosely understand it myself, and so I won't spend a great deal amount of time. Other than that's to say that the altitude changes based on the pressure, the barometric pressure. And so, yeah, your barometric pressure has changed, and so you're going to see just that. It's going to change. Um, I'll have to change that. I apologize. I was getting some audio from a Discord channel. I should just get out of that channel so we're not confronted with that stuff. In fact, I'll do that so I don't hear anything. Okay, so that should do it. So, like I said, I was intending on discussing, some things in the channel regarding um, regarding the um, the Airbus 310 and some of its systems. If people had questions about it, that was my plan. That's what I was going to do. But there is nobody there, so I won't discuss it because I'll be talking to myself like I am right now. Let me see if I can. subscriptions, and just make sure that it is. It is. Very good. So I'll make sure that now I see a precipitant. Recipient. So maybe I'm not understanding this. Maybe there are people there. I just so you folks are aware, I'm pretty new to the whole streaming thing. I've done some, um, but I'm not as good at it um, as one would hope that he should be. Um, top chat, live chat, because I know there's somebody in the channel right now, um, but he doesn't show. Let's see about this. Hello. But it does show there. So how do I see who is in the channel watching the stream? Um, some messages such as potential harm. No, you see, that was one of my issues. Uh, Participants. There we go. Now I see him as a participant. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. 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 Yeah. So we're going to let this go. I'm going to, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, pause my video camera stream here for a bit, and I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee and do all that stuff. Our preparation for arrival is probably going to be, in the next 20 minutes or so. So in that area, what I'll do is I think what I'll do is I'll give you an outside view, um, and I will come back after I have get my cup of coffee. So let me turn this off, mute my mic, and I'll be back in a moment. I've been talking to myself this whole time. That's interesting. We're getting close to top of descent, and we're going to come back once we get a little closer. We are. Let me just validate how far I think we are. Yeah, I'm guessing we're about 100 miles or so before top of descent. We can see that here. So in another 10 minutes or so, we're going to start talking about preparation for top of descent and getting that configured and set up. So turn. Oops, apologize for that screen in front of my stream. I was doing something else and didn't realize that I had another window in front of the stream itself. Um, it's a Blender program that just I was working on something in there and I didn't realize that I had Blender opened in front of my streaming stream. So we're getting closer. Let's just maybe we'll start it now. We'll kind of go through it here just a little bit. I think we're about 100 miles out. So one of the importance in having chart Fox is we want to. For me, I like to get myself prepared. So if I actually had a star, I would review the star. For example, let's just speculate here for a minute. It isn't, but let's just speculate this was going to be our star here. I'm in the wrong airport. Let me go back to Boise. KBO. What? I. Okay. Go back to Boise. So again, let's just speculate for a second that, we were going to be using a star coming in, and we have our approach, obviously. And our approach is runway 10 left, RNAV. But let's assume that we were going to use this approach right here. Actually, we can maybe look at where are we joining in here, Jimmy? Doesn't matter. I'm going to use this one as the example. So, um, you would be coming in, here, and you would either be joining here or you'd be joining here, one of the two. And so what I would do is I would just come here and I would be looking at this stuff, and I would be saying, okay, let me kind of surmise, how I'm going to come in. So if I was coming on a 10 left or right, and I was coming in from this direction, I'd be like, okay, I gotta be above 16,000, above 10,000, above 8,000, at 250, above 6,000, at 210. So the line above and the below means that's where you have to be. The line below means you got to be above the prescribed. If there's a line that goes above that, then you got to be below the prescribed number that's in there, right? So here, for example, at this waypoint, they want us to come in at 8,000 at 210 knots on the dot right there. That's what they want. But anyways, so I would be looking at these charts, and I would be surmising, what my game plan is and that kind of stuff, because I want to be prepared coming in, right? Now, all we have here on this one is the approach, right? And so uh, we're going to be coming in on runway 10 right here. So we're going to be coming in from this direction, um, over here somewheres. Um, if I pull this over here, and we'll open that up a little bit bigger. So we see runway 10 being, whoops, have I gone to our alternate? I do that very often. I did. So runway 10 right here, right? So if I click on here and I right click and I go to show arrival and approaches, I pick on runway 10 left. So that's what we're using. We're not using a star, but we are using an RNAV approach on runway Yankee, RNAV Yankee. So that's RNAV Y 10 left. So I insert that in, and you now see we've got this plan coming in. So this is where we're going to come in. From this point here, Jimmy, I think that's it, Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy, something like that. If we go back to here, we see Jimmy is right there, right? So everything back of Jimmy would be considered the star if we were using a star. Everything forward of Jimmy is the approach. So we're going to come in here on Jimmy. Jimmy, we're going to come in between 7,000 and 6,000 feet. So I'm probably going to set it for like 6,500 feet. So this is part of that preparation that I do and getting ready for the top of descent. So there's our top of descent as per little nav map. So let me move some of this stuff out of the way, and we can see now we're 80 out. We know that we want to be 6,500 feet. So I'm going to set my altitude right here for 6,500 feet. You're going to notice that the aircraft is not going to descend because it's still holding, based on the profile, um, that it was told to hold on to. And it will change that once we get close to our top of descent. I'll get myself dialed in here for 6,500. 6,500, there it is. Now, so as we get closer to this and as my plane gets closer, what I'm going to typically do is I'm going to zoom that in just a little bit so we can see that I got that at a distance of 60 nautical miles. So I'm at least 60 nautical miles away from it. I'm rushing this through a little too quick, but you can see we have 120 nautical miles. We're inside of the 80-mile marker. I'm going to guess we're close to 100 miles out. And I'm going to close that in a little bit as we get closer and closer. I'm going to do kind of like that so I can see, when I'm, 20 miles out and 10 miles out. When I get around here somewhere, that's when we're going to actually go over to here. And you notice the down arrow? Well, that down arrow, when I press that, that means the aircraft is going to pull the engines back and idle it down a little bit, and then it's going to start its descent. After that, we're going to start seeing a little graphic here that's indicating our profile or our trajectory going down and how accurate that trajectory actually is, whether we're high or whether we're low. And I'll talk about that a little bit on our way down so that people can understand a little bit about what that actually means. I do apologize if I get too winded about things, but it is just in my nature to explain things to the nth degree. And for those that know all of this stuff already, you guys can just, you know, avoid it, fast forward, move on, whatever. But it's also there. I'm also here doing this kind of stuff for the novice, for the first time guy, for the guy who says, hey, I want to fly that plane but I have no idea what to do. I have no idea how to even start it. And so many people, they get involved in the flight simulation and they ignore a lot of the stuff that most pilots would do. Now, having said that, I am not a pilot. Sure would love to be one, but I'm not. But but they avoid all those things and they think it to be so complicated to do. And you can see that it, once you understand some of the premises behind this, you find yourself saying to yourself, "Oh, that's not that complicated." I mean, how do you start your car? Well, if you don't have fuel, it will never start. Now, the difference between your car and a jet is your car, the minute you turn the key on, the fuel pump starts up and starts pumping fuel. It does that all automated. Here, you actually have to turn the pumps on. That's it. Um, you have a starter when you start your car. You turn the ignition over, or the battery fires up, sends power to the starter spins the engine over and creates spark, and away you go. Here, we use air to spin the turbines, and we use air driven from the APU. The APU is our battery. We need that running in order to get everything running. So once you start understanding some of the fundamentals of this, and I'm far from an expert, but I understand enough maybe just to be dangerous. um, but but once you start understanding some of these systems and how and why they have to be, if you don't for example, if you don't put the APU bleed on, well, the pressure that's being created, the air pressure that's being created by the APU, which is the generator, that pressure is what's used to spin the engine. And when you spin that engine, and you put the igniter on, it starts to heat and it starts getting hot. And the hotter it gets, that's the N1 and N2 temperatures, I believe. As it reaches a certain temperature, if you were to dump fuel in there, that fuel will ignite. And there you have that jet turbine spinning. And then, of course, now that the jet turbine is spinning, it has its own generator, so you can use power that's being generated from that turbine. So that's why we have to make sure the bleed is turned on. There's a lot of systems, and other aircraft have more complicated systems, or not complicated, but more in-depth systems. Some of the newer aircrafts are becoming more automated. So, for example, on a 737, a Boeing 737, 800, um, you not only do you have to turn the APU bleed on, but you also have to turn the packs off. And the packs are the air conditioning units and the cooling units. So the APU is pushing air through those air conditioning and heating units. And if you use the air there and you don't turn the packs off, there won't be enough air pressure to spin the turbines. So you have to manually do that. Now the 787 and the 737 Max, you don't have to do that. Those things become more automated. Anyways, that's a story for other aircraft and startups and stuff like that. But I say all of this so that those people, those budding pilots who are doing this for the first time and who are trying to learn how to do this for the first time, that you guys might see this and go, oh, you know what? That's not that complicated. Because you know what? If a guy like me can figure this stuff out, the bottom line is it isn't that complicated. It really isn't. Um, Now, have I passed my top of descent? I may have. Um, no, there it is. It's right there. So yeah, this is an older aircraft, and because it's an older aircraft, we have a bunch of gauges and stuff like that. Where the new ones, have the glass cockpit and they got all these fancy displays and that kind of stuff, like the 787, 777, 737s, Maxes and stuff like that. They all have these more fancier displays, but fundamentally, they're all still doing the same thing, right? They're all still spinning the engines over, waiting for that temperature to come up. And when that temperature comes up, they're dumping fuel on it, and then it ignites. Okay. Um, so yeah, it isn't complicated. Once you understand those fundamentals, I feel confident that I could go into almost any aircraft in the sim, and maybe even real world, and I feel like I could start the engines. Um, I'd probably be nervous as heck that I'm doing something wrong, but I feel like I could probably start them. So yeah, and I like to do these things, and I'm thankful that I'm doing these things because as we get into 2024, there's a whole new level of immersion brought into there. And so there's outside walkarounds now that we can do. So we can go out there and we can pull the wheel chocks up ourselves. We can go out there and take the pitot tube covers and all of the engine covers and all of the cowling covers and all of that. We can take all those covers ourselves. We can go outside and we can inspect the aircraft and the flight surfaces ourselves and check the flight surfaces and make sure they're functioning and doing everything they're supposed to do. So that's a whole new different set of immersion that you can do. Um, I presume that that can be turned off, but let's just we'll leave it like that. But again, I presume that can be turned off. That you don't have to have that level of immersion on. I, for one, will have it um, because I enjoy that kind of stuff. Right, here we are, 10 miles out from top of descent. So as I had indicated before, we are going to we have our initial flight set for 6,500. Once we get our aircraft close to that top of descent, now the Boeing, the newer Boeings, 737, 787, actually the 747, all of those aircraft so far, you don't actually have to do this step that we're about to do. What you do have to do is all you have to do is set your descent altitude to wherever you want to set. You can come down here and you can say, you can incrementally do it. Let's assume here Jimmy. So Jimmy, we want to be 6,000. We want to be 14,000. Want to be 10,000 and then 39. So I could set it for originally for 10,000, and then I could set it for 14,000. Why it goes from 10 to 14 is beyond me, but that's just the way it is. I just dial this all the way down to 6,500, and then I let the aircraft manage these altitude profiles itself. Okay. We've got a 30-mile out. Let's bring that to 15. That'll get us to a 5 mile increment. So we're getting close. We'll zoom ourselves out, and remember, we'll put our cursor there so we see that down arrow pop up. And as we come across, so right now you can see the graphic has appeared. See right there? We're so close to the top of the descent. We are right on profile right now. If I wait too long, that profile is going to change. I'm not going to wait, but I will explain that profile, that gauge a little bit. So I'm going to click the arrow, and we're going to see down here in this corner here, and we're going to see this right here. Did I not click it? I think I did. Yep, there we go. So we're on our way down, and our speed should be coming back. There it is. It's coming back. Right. So our throttle is coming back. So you see that diamond has dropped below. Now, some people are going to, when you ask for an explanation of that diamond and that what does that mean? Am I too high? Am I too low? The bottom line is you chase the diamond. So if that diamond is down there, that means your aircraft is too high. That means you got to bring the aircraft down. What we're seeing now is the diamond is high, which means we're too low, which means we got to climb up a little bit. Okay. So when somebody tells you chase the diamond, that's what they're referring to. Wherever the diamond is, you have to move your aircraft either in the upward or the downward direction. I hope I've explained that properly. Early on in my simming career, I had uh, I had lots of problems with that. I had asked many people, could they, what does that mean? And then somebody would say, well, you chase the diamond. Okay. And quite honestly, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I didn't quite understand it. I thought I did, but then I would forget. And then I'd have to go through that again. I have an understanding of it now. Chasing the diamond is, like I just said, if the diamond is low, you're too high. If the diamond is high, you're too low. It's kind of the opposite, which is I wonder if that's what my confusion in amongst all of this was. It was backwards from what my brain was telling me. Anyways, so we are on our way down. Now we got about, I want to say we got about 100, yeah, 28 there. So I think we got about a 70 to 80 mile um, um, distance. Track miles, I think is what they call them. They call them track miles. Speaking of which, I want to discuss that briefly. A friend of mine does this all the time. He knows who he is if he sees this video. Um, but he'll come in here and he'll look at this and go, I just don't like the path that the aircraft is taking. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna now in this case you can't really do much with it. But if so, for example, let's say we were coming from over here out in the east and it was having to do this loop around, it might do a kind of a loop up here and then come back, and he might say to himself, well, I don't want to go all the way up there. I'm just gonna nix it and come this way and come straight in. Now you can do that. The issue with that is these aircraft in the simulator, and I suspect in real life as well, they are set to say, okay, you are on profile because we have X number of miles to travel, and at the current trajectory and at the current rate of speed, I have enough miles, and I have the speed control in order to get to my 6,500 feet where I'm intending to get to at that location. If you reduce the track miles, um, you then reduce the amount of time to descend and control speed to get there, and you find yourself chasing the diamond, as it were. And you almost always end up finding yourself chasing it to the point where you're going to be too high or too fast. So, um, landing and descending is a matter of managing energy, right? So not so much altitude. It's about managing the energy, because the altitude we can just push the yoke forward and go down. But when we do that, we gain speed, right? Um, if we just say, well, wait a minute, I want to make sure I manage my speed, well, then I'm going to be too high. So you have to manage the energy in which is going to be produced in coming down. That diamond that we're looking at is doing that for us. That profile that we're looking at, which is this right here, is doing that for us. It's controlling the throttle and the rate of speed, or yeah, the rate of speed coming down, so that we will be able to get to the 6,500 feet where we want to be at Jimmy, um, and not be traveling, 300 knots, because we could get there regardless. We just, like I said, we could just nose it forward and we could get to Jimmy at 6,500 feet. But what if we're going 350 knots? Are we going to be able to get that aircraft slowed down to get down on the ground? Because we got to go from 6,500 feet. We still got to get on the ground. And then we got to get the thing wound up. This aircraft, in normal configuration, wants to land somewhere around between 120 and 140 knots, not 300, you know? Um, so I hope that's been somewhat helpful for new budding sim pilots out there who want to take their simming maybe to the next level. I hope that's been helpful in doing that. And you're seeing this little blue arrow here, and it's constantly changing as my rate of descent is changing, my speed is changing. You're going to sometimes see profile will come away um, um, off the central line. And that can be things like, well, wait a minute. Let's say we get to the decel area, and decel means that the engines are going to decel themselves, slow down. So let's say we get to the decel area, which means in order to decel or slow the aircraft down, it may reduce the descent rate. And if it reduces the descent rate, we might find ourselves showing an indicator of being high, right? Um, you may not need to worry about that too much, because as the engine is decelling and as the aircraft is reducing the amount of kinetic energy and forward energy, eventually it'll get to the speed that it's supposed to be at. And then when it's at that speed, you will be able to regain the profile and start descending and regaining the correct altitude. You can also use your speed brakes to help with that. Now, the 737 and the 7777 that I fly fairly regular on the information center down here, the FMC, there they will actually give you a notification, and up here they'll give you a notification. Drag is required, and that is not necessarily a gender choice, but it's actually, sorry for those people. It was intended to be funny, not offensive. Anyways, um, that is to then use your speed brakes a little bit, so that we can slow down and consume some of that energy on its way down, right? So again, like you see there, we're a little low, but we're not worried about that. What we're looking for here is if this diamond is up here somewhere, or if this diamond is down there, this little bit that we're out, we can regain that easily. Okay, let's let's see where we're at in the big wide world. We're getting there. We just popped through. We got some bumps down there. I'm gonna look at the now. I use a little nav map to collect this data, but you can also collect this data out of uh, ChartFox. I'm just so used to using a little nav map to do this. Runway elevation is 2872. We'll go out back here and get myself sorted a little bit. Little town there called Ontario, directly in front of us, right there. Um, yeah, so I'm just using time to fill in while we're doing this, and I might as well, blah 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 a little bit, because that's what I do. So I blah blah blah. Um, so as we come down, we're going to get ourselves turned. Now, I want to talk about briefly. I want to talk about stabilized approach. Okay, um, I believe that's the actual phrase that I've heard pilots use: the stabilized approach. So we are coming in here, we're turning. There's the feathers, and then we're going to come in. Now we're coming in on RNAV approach, and I don't know if this actually reflects an RNAV or if this is. See, this actually is reflecting a Cat 3 approach, and yet on the FMC it was no Cat 3 approach or ILS or whatever. We're gonna come in now. Stabilized approach. That's why I brought this up. So the stabilized approach at this point, usually some ish 10 miles. They see there is the RNAV right there, but yet there's also showing an ILS. I think that's wrong. Anyways, some 10 miles or so before the runway, we want to be stabilized. What does stabilized mean? Well, stabilized means um, you want to have your landing gear out. You want to have the amount of flaps you intend to deploy. You want to have them out. You want to be descending. Somewhere's in that potential. Somewhere's in that um, 700-800 feet a minute. That's a stabilized approach. So you don't want the last thing you want to do is be coming in and, as I said earlier on, coming in and go, hey, I'm way too high, and nose are down, right? That's not a stabilized approach. And you're going to see, I'm going to hopefully do a good job of stabilized approach, and hopefully do a reasonably decent job of landing, um, and we'll see how that works for us. One other thing that I'm going to do while I'm looking into all of this stuff, we're at 1,600 feet, so we're going to go here. We're going to take standard off. I'm going to hit the B key, so it'll adjust the actual barometric pressure. So we got that working for us. I'm also going to look at a little nav map quickly. Now we're coming in here, 10 left right here. So we're going to come in here and we're probably going to try to branch off the runway here. If not here, then probably here. And then we're going to come across and we're going to taxi and we're going to find ourselves a stand somewhere to park the thing. Where, don't know yet, but somewhere's we're going to find a place to park the thing. So that's another thing that I kind of do. And I say, okay, myself, I prepare myself. When I'm turning off to the right. I want to know that. I want to know that ahead of time. Okay. So now I know when I land, I'm going to turn off the runway right, and I'm going to cross another runway. Then I'm going to get to the taxiway, and then I'm going to turn right again, and I'm going to go taxiing down that way. So I put that in my head. I get that all set up kind of mentally, so I know what I'm doing. You can through ChartFox, you can do exactly the same. Uh, so there's the runway. We're coming in here. This is the runway we're coming in right here, right? Um, Now, what is this down here? Oh, there's a terminal building right there. Oh, maybe what we'll do is I'll take that back. Maybe, maybe what we'll do is we'll taxi off to the left side. Where is the terminal building? So that's parking here. That's the de-icing pad up there. Yeah. And the terminal building should be right here. And, oh, and there's the gates right there. Okay. So yeah, I take that back. Again, so this is kind of why I kind of prep for this stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to come here. So I'm probably going to end up coming off the runway somewhere on taxiway D or C, and we'll get onto A, and we're going to taxi. We're going to turn off left, and we're going to taxi left. Okay, so that's the beauty of this, and this is the same thing that I would do if I was still using Navigraph, right? I would do that. So I'm using a free service to accomplish the exact same thing. Likewise, I'm using a free service to get this figured out for myself as well. And if I was using a star, I would be using a free service to do that as well, right? If I was looking at the star and this was my star, then I would be using there it is. I would just be using this to figure this stuff out for myself. Okay. So for example, here, this is the right and left approach. And this is the right and left approach for runway 28 and runway 10. Okay. Anyways, let me go back to the airport diagram so I have that up front and center. Okay, here we go. So we're slowing down a little bit. We are a little high. That's what that diamond is indicating. We're a little high. We should be able to catch that and come around. I don't think we're going to have a problem with that. And we're about 10 miles away from becoming or wanting for us to become more stabilized, where we'll start thinking about flaps and all those things. I'm going to dial in a frequency of this ILS. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to dial it in anyways. 111.10. 10. So we'll put that in there. We're not going to use it, but we're going to put it in there. Our course that we are going to use for landing is 102. That's over here. So we're going to set that to 102. There's 102. We're coming in. At some point, we're going to take over control of the actual speed itself because I want to be able to slow myself down a little bit. I prefer to be a little slower, maybe. Um, my plan is I'm going to be 210. See, we're slowing down now. It's doing a decent job of that. We are way too high because it's trying to slow down. As I said before, you'll get this from time to time. I will not worry about the too terribly much just yet because I know that our initial was 6 to 7,000. So we're at 7,100. So we're within that. There's our airport. Drop one stage of flaps. We're going to get our gear down. We're not using an ILS, so we're gonna dial this altitude ourselves manually, bring it down. I'm gonna take over control on the speed. Set that for 170. So right now I'm busily trying to get myself on a stabilized approach. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna arm the speed brake. I'm going to use maximum auto brake. Right there is max auto brake set. Um, Now, according to this, I'm too low, but that's okay. So our runway is right there. To me, it feels like we're too high. Actual runway elevation is 28 and change, I believe. So there's a lot going on right now. Normally, if you were a pilot and you were an actual pilot, you have a first officer and a pilot, so you'd have two people managing this stuff, not one. Um, but we're coming down, and we're as much as this is saying we are too low. It might very well be that we are too low. It should hopefully straighten itself out here a little bit. But I'm going to take over here shortly, and shortly being now. We'll get a little quiet here as I'm setting up. I understand what I did wrong. I made a tactical error, but we recovered from it, so we're in good shape. I actually didn't set my landing mode here, and I needed to set that landing mode, and I forgot to do that. So that disables the altitude hold and all that good stuff. But okay, we're good. We're a little high. You can see on the left-hand side the two whites. We're sinking. We're decline, or we're not quite stabilized. That sink rate rating is saying we're descending too quickly. 100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5. Reverse is on. Speed brake should be up. We managed to get her slowed up. I'm not supposed to stop on the runway. I accidentally had my parking brake set. That's okay. So we'll turn off here. Now, whether this is the way you're supposed to do it or not, I'm not sure. But I typically will stop somewhere over here. I'll set the parking brakes. I'll get the aircraft ready to taxi. Um, I'm going to turn on the APU and get that running, because the last thing they want to do is have the big jet engines spinning along while they get there and hook up the jetway and all that stuff. I'm going to reset my trim. There we go. So we'll find ourselves a little spot there to park. This looks like as good a gate as any. And that does her. So we should have uh, access to ground power, but we got our APU is running, so we should be able to shut our engines off. So we will shut we'll shut this off, shut the engine off, or the fuel off. Notice that we're available on the APU, and there was a small power interruption. That was it cycling from the engine generators to that. I don't need APU because I'm not starting up anything. I could put APU on. That would give us heating and cooling right here. right? So then we would still have heating and cooling in the cabin. Okay. Um, I should have used taxi, but I didn't because, once again, I forgot. Right. That um, is as far as I'm going to take this. Um, that is the flight, cold and dark, Victoria to Boise, in an A310. You've seen it all. I will quickly touch base on what again I did wrong. I didn't spend much time with that. So as we're getting closer and we're ready to go and get ourselves ready for the final, um, all that stuff, we can use the VOR/localize mode. So the localizer, we can pick up the localizer and we can line ourselves up. We can use what is the landing mode or the auto land. What I should have done is I should have clicked on the localizer. It would have picked up the localizer of the aircraft. Now, because we're doing RNAV, it's not going to control the height for us. That's something we still have to manage ourselves. But it will line the aircraft up in line with the runway, which it did that anyways. Um, but I needed to manage the altitude myself. I didn't do such a great job of that. All right, that is it, Raymond, Stream Gamers, Cold and Dark A310. And hopefully you found it informative. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, all those wonderful things. Please press them, do them if you would like to. If you have any comments, any questions, by all means, leave them in the comment section. I do look at them. I don't always look at them the instant that they're put out, but I do look at them. I do read every one of them. I do respond to every one of them, um, with the exception of some spam ones that I get from time to time. But I do respond to every one of them the best I can, and I'm willing to help. Um, in doing some private discussions for some people if they want to. At least now there isn't a lot of people. I may not be able to do that all the time, but I can do it now. Once again, thank you for watching the video. For those that do watch it, and I appreciate your time. And you have yourselves a wonderful and blessed day. And we'll talk on our next one. Bye bye now.